Going back to that story about the fire in Dagenham, London Fire Brigade have said all people are accounted for after a major fire at a block of flats in East London. Now, the building was surrounded with scaffolding and what's described as non-compliant cladding was being removed. More than 100 people were evacuated and 2 people taken to hospital. Well, joining me now is Jennifer Frame, volunteer for End Our Cladding Scandal. Madam, thank you so much for joining us here on Sky News. Before we talk about some of the issues around the specific building in Dagenham, I know that you've spoken to some of those affected by the fire this morning. What did they say?
Well, thank you for covering this issue. I think I've spoken to the Residents Association this morning. And at the moment, obviously, it's focusing on the fact that it's a human issue. We've got people who ran out barefoot. You've got people who won't have bank cards, who won't know how they're going to feed their families today. And there was quite a lot of shock, I would say, in terms of just the practical issues that they're going to have to deal with, finding emergency accommodation, how to get through the next few weeks. I've personally lost my home in a fire, so I know what the next few weeks are going to be like. And I think the priority is to make sure that they have the support they need in the next few weeks and then to begin to get answers to what happened. But I think let's not forget that this is actually a human tragedy. We talk about the building safety crisis, but this is real people's lives that are completely derailed today.
No, it's a very painful and traumatic thing to go through. Looking at this specific building now, the London Fire Brigade have said that an investigation is now underway. The truth is we don't know what caused this fire. From what you do know, for example, that it was surrounded with scaffolding and what's described as non-compliant cladding was being removed. So from what you do know, what do you think of what happened or how it should be dealt with now?
Well, obviously, the full investigation from the London Fire Brigade is essential to know what the actual cause of the fire was. But regardless of what started the fire or the cause of the sort of spark, I suppose, that started the fire, the issue is that while buildings have non-compliant cladding on or other construction defects that allow fire to spread rapidly, that allows fire to sort of transcend from flat to flat very quickly. And that's the issue here, is that if you have a fire in a flat normally and it's not got any construction defects or it's not got unsafe cladding, then you'd expect that fire to be contained in one flat, possibly to spread to the neighbouring flat, but to give it time for the fire service to come and be able to address it. So the very fact that it spread so rapidly, that's the question that needs to be asked, is what was it about the materials that allowed that to happen? And I think while buildings are undergoing remediation, we have to remember that they're actually in a more vulnerable state. The walls are exposed, there's scaffolding, which can allow fire to spread as well. So actually, for all these remediation projects across the country, mostly people live in their homes while they're being made safe. So they're effectively living on a construction site. And while that can be done safely, so I don't want to put fear into everybody that's in that situation, it can be managed safely. But there needs to be a question over making sure that resident safety is always at the forefront and the priority during these projects, to make sure that there isn't any cutting of corners to save moving residents out, for example. So I think, there needs to be a full investigation, but there's certainly some general issues that mean this is an issue that could affect thousands of buildings across the country.
Yeah. As it happens, next week we'll see the publication of the Phase 2 report of the Grenfell inquiry, basically the final report to be published next week. Obviously, it's been years since that devastating fire. I mean, it sounds like lessons obviously have been learned and the situation now isn't like then. But do you feel that more needs to be done?
Oh, absolutely. The government recently estimated that there are 11,000 buildings needing remediation work. They're only reporting on about 4,500. There's only about 4,500 being monitored or in programs. So there's thousands that don't yet have a remediation plan or aren't being watched or monitored. And of those that have been fixed, I think there's about 1,300 have been fixed so far, but that's only 12% of that total estimated 11,000 buildings. So it's been shockingly slow to make buildings safe. We really need to step up the urgency of that. And obviously with the Grenfell report coming up, There's several responsible parties, and we're going to see that that's going to be laid bare in the findings of that report, from business to manufacturers to construction to testing to government officials. But the one thing that all parties can agree on is that the residents and leaseholders are not to blame, and yet they're the ones that are continuing to live in unsafe homes and paying the price. These particular residents submitted evidence to Parliament a couple of years ago, highlighting the unbearable stress that they were under, the soaring insurance premiums, the inability to sell their homes, the fact that leaseholders can't afford expensive legal action, and not enough has been done to move on with this issue. We've addressed about 12% of the problem, and we really need the new government to step up and treat it much more urgently.
You mentioned a little earlier in the interview that you yourself have lost or had lost a home in a fire. There will be so many people tonight who are safe. They left with their lives, which of course is the most important thing, but many will have lost their homes. Some won't have insurance. What words of advice or support would you give them beyond the issue of cladding, but more just about the devastation of losing one's house in a fire?
Yes, well, thank you. I mean, that's the reason I reached out to them this morning, as I know how that feels, and I know that it's the human cost of it. So yes, we might, thank that luck held and that it was a near miss, but actually those people are going to be going through a devastating period for the next few months. They probably won't be able to sleep at nights. They're going to be vigilant about everything. They're going to be really conscious of their safety. Some people will have lost absolutely everything they own. Despite having been worried for 7 years and waiting for this to be fixed, it's been left too late. So we just really need to keep in mind that these are actual people's lives. It's been estimated there are 600,000 people still in unsafe buildings across the country. This isn't a small problem. 15,000 people have been evacuated from their homes since Grenfell, either through fires like ours in Worcester Park or through their building being declared too unsafe to live in. So this isn't a minor issue. It really needs to be dealt with urgency.
Absolutely. Jennifer Frame, volunteer for End Our Cladding Scandal. Madam, thank you for sharing your experiences with us.